everyone. Welcome to the Transatlantic Call-In Show, exactly on time as always. This is the show where you can talk to some trans people and you can ask us questions. You can turn up with evidence that proves we don't exist, and we can humiliate you live on air. This week, you can talk to me, Katy Montgomerie, the on-timest person of all time, who lives in a time zone which has yet to change this year. And you could also talk to...
me, Arden Hart. You know, I can't remember if this happened to us last year, but I definitely remember this happened to us the first year, because you were also doing a podcast with Krista Peterson at the time. And there was like some weird... Yeah, it was like super confused because of all the time zone changes. So it is kind of right in line with our brand to be disjointed by daylight savings time. You know, if they would just do the smart thing and make it daylight savings time 100% of the time, we wouldn't have this problem. But, you know.
Also, if maybe Americans hadn't just changed it by 2 weeks, then that'd be fine. So.
Yeah, I don't understand why we both do DST, but US does it like 2 weeks before, UK does it 2 weeks after. Why? It's so confusing.
Who knows? I'm sure someone can tell us in a super chat for $5 or more, which we will read out at the end.
Yes, do that.
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty flustered. Just Thursday's the worst day of the week for me, and now it's just like constant things. I don't get a chance to stop. And Poppy's not very happy at the moment, so I'm a bit worried about her too. But other than that, I am alive, and I hope you are alive too.
I am breathing at the very least, and I think we are finally all set for our show today. Yeah, if y'all don't know, normally we do our show at 2 p.m. Central Time in the U.S., but because of daylight savings time and like we're pointing at the UK's difference, there was a miscommunication, confusion. So it's fine, we pushed it back an hour. But it's been a fluster. I'm glad you guys are all here, and I'm ready to take on the world. Not really, but you know. So if you don't know, on the show, every week we do a poll to kind of talk about current events or general trans issues and get the sense of what our community thinks about certain things. Last week, we asked you, following the coverage of JK Rowling's explicit misgendering and bigoted comments towards India Willoughby, do you think disaffected moderates will finally start acknowledging JK as transphobic? And unsurprisingly, 80% of you said no, and 20% said yes. That's out of 6.1 thousand votes. And I didn't read too many of the comments, but all of the ones I read seemed to kind of echo the sentiments that we were giving on last week's show, where it's, I would... You know, it should have happened sooner. I wish this would be the final straw. But realistically, we just live in a very different time. I don't think people are... people are, like, in their camp. And that is just kind of the end of the story in a lot of ways. So, yeah, I don't think it's going to affect things too dramatically. But, yeah.
Arden says that as someone who admits to have not been... on the internet in the last few days much. Yeah. So she missed everything that happened yesterday. I'm just trying to find a good summary of it so I don't get the wrong.
I know all the historical facts that that I am alleging.
I'm not alleging anything because I live in the UK.
That's correct. Yeah, so we're not going to spend too much time on this. Let's just jump right into this week's poll, because I think...
Which may change the results of last week's poll if we were to go back in time.
So, this week's poll reads, did you have JK Rowling denying Nazi war crimes against trans people on your 2024 bingo card? So, I couldn't read to you the art. I did find the tweet that I think we were discussing, where she basically said... that somebody needed to check their sources because they were talking about the burning of the Hirschfield Institute library.
Let's just read it out exactly so that we don't get any facts wrong.
Sure.
I mean, if we got facts wrong, we'd just back down and apologize and correct them. But not right. Everyone in this domain of maybe arguing about whether trans people should have human rights is that kind of person. So they might not think we'd do that. But so someone, a random anonymous Twitter profile, said this and got 5 views for it. Okay. The Nazis burned books on trans healthcare and research. Why are you so desperate to uphold their ideology around gender? And JK Rowling blasted this to her 14 million followers, saying, How? How did you type this out and press send without thinking, I should maybe check my source for this because it might have been a fever dream? So,
right.
The way I read this, and I think that every rational person alive has read this, is that she is questioning about whether the Nazis burning books on trans healthcare and research was a fever dream. So lots of people responded to this in lots of different ways. There's a range of terms from denying the history of the world to some people saying Holocaust denial, and some people saying Nazi war crimes denial. And there is a big discussion about what counts as what. But what we can say for a fact is the Nazis did burn books on trans healthcare and research. That is just a fact. There's photos of it. There's a video of it. It's well documented. This then spun into a wider discussion about whether trans people were persecuted under the Nazis, which they were, which is just historically true. And J.K. Rowling did double down on her view that we just read out there. She didn't back off. She hasn't deleted it. She hasn't apologized. She's made loads of other tweets related to it. And by the way, I can hear my voice echoing back. I don't know if that's your headphones. So what I'm going to do is I am going to recommend that everyone checks out Aron Ra's thread or article about this. So Erin's been on the show a few times, and she's great, and you should already be following her on whatever platform you like to be on. But she's done an article called, which you can Google, which I am just saying, in general, is a summary, but I'm not the author of this article, and I'm not endorsing it beyond the sources that it presents. It says, J.K. Rowling, Holocaust denialism, author pushes claims that trans people were not a target. It's worth reading anyway, her article, because she outlines what J.K. Rowling said and said since that original tweet, but also gives evidence of the Nazis persecuting trans people, including like from sources such as the Holocaust Museum and various other reputable institutions which study this kind of thing.
Yeah.
So what is pretty uncontroversial is the fact that the research around trans people was burned by the Nazis. One of the first major book burnings was their Sexology Institute, which I was going to try and learn how to say with properly because it's a German name, obviously, but I decided not to. It's the Institute of Sexology,
right? It's
in German.
The Hirschfeld. Sometimes people call it the Hirschfeld Institute because I can't remember his first name, but something
Magnus.
Hirschfeld. Was it?
Magnus
Hirschfeld, that's right. Magnus Hirschfeld was really a pioneer in a lot of the pro, how we would think about it now. I'm sure they didn't use the exact same words then, but about being pro LGBT. I believe he was involved in creating some films that were featuring gay people in positive romantic situations that were kind of framed at the time as propaganda. They engaged in some of the first sex change surgeries and some of the research on that. And he was really one of the first people to in a scientific setting to say, hey, maybe, crazy thought here, but maybe the people who are men that like men and women who like women and the people who think that their gender is not the same as the one assigned at their birth, maybe those people are actually acting within their nature, and that it would be better for us to accept them as that and to not try to force them to fit into, the cultural mode that we have decided. But also, of course, because this is happening during the Holocaust and World War II, Magnus Hirschfeld was also Jewish. So I think you kind of maybe alluded a little bit to it, but there is a not so subtle relationship between gender critical ideology and anti-Semitic tropes of, transgenderism was created by Jewish people to push humanity towards transhumanism or some absolute nonsense along those lines. Oh, you're muted right now, Katie.
Sorry. In fact, if earlier we talked about the 2 years ago or 3 years ago, whenever it was, when there was a mess up with the time zones and I ended up having to jump straight from one podcast into another, the podcast I was doing, which is on my channel with Krista Peterson, Krista did loads of research into the gender critical movement and like the anti-Semitic sort of, I don't want to say roots, because I think that that's the wrong way around to look at it. The roots are transphobia, but it ends up tending towards anti-Semitism because all conspiracy theory movements end up doing that.
Right.
And gender critical is just another one. But yeah, but there are certainly some people who, at least in 2020 or whenever we were doing that podcast, were at the edges of gender critical, who were just kind of worming their way in and getting promoted by the mainstream ones, who were saying this trans people were invented by the Jews to try and sell transhumanism to the wider public or something. But I think one of the things as well that's important to highlight, because this is probably the argument you're going to see the most from the transphobes and the deniers, is that they'll say something like, no, it doesn't say anywhere in any of the Nazis' laws or newspapers or anything, trans people. It doesn't even have the word transgender. Therefore, they weren't targeted. They only ever targeted homosexuals and sexual degenerates, because that's who that they specifically said. But then the same people who just made that argument, maybe within seconds of making that argument, will say trans people today don't exist. They are just homosexuals and sexual degenerates. And it's like the same. It's the same thing. In fact, the original tweet that this all sparked off about was saying, why do you want to like promote their ideology? And part of it was invalidating whether LGBT people are a thing and just saying it's all degeneracy, which is like a general term for a lot of things, but does include usually LGBT people.
Yeah.
And they're just doing the same thing today.
I think it's also worth noting that, well, sure, the word transgender wasn't used. Magnus Hirschfeld, I believe, I'm not clear on whether he coined the term or whether he just like popularized it, but the term transvestite didn't quite have the sexual connotation at the time, and was the word that he used a lot to describe these people who sort of wore the vestments, the trans vestments of the opposite gender. Also, a big aspect of his research was into intersex conditions. So I do think it's also interesting that they're like, oh no, he only targeted gays and sexual degenerates. But part of that group that was targeted were intersex people who, could arguably be straight cisgender people for all intents and purposes, but
still degenerates.
Right, but because of some sort of external genitalia or something, I'm presuming that they would be considered degenerates, or maybe by virtue of just attending this clinic alone, a clinic run by a Jewish sexual degenerate could mark them as a target. It's really disappointing to see this kind of stuff happen, but it's also not surprising. Like Katie pointed out, pretty much all conspiracy theories lead to one another, and the anti-Semitic ones are just very vibrant in our time, I think, because we haven't really successfully squelched the sentiments that started the Holocaust and World War II, and they're part of me. It's difficult because there's the aspect of free speech being an important thing, and I even the worst ideas, sometimes I think there's an element of it's important to sort of allow them to brand themselves, that way we can all know who to stay away from. But at the same time, man, in the internet, everyone is getting a community of people who thinks like them, and I don't really love the notion of letting communities of people with those values get comfortable. Don't know what the solution is, but
I think it's good that she's got loads of pushback on this, and like to reference our previous week's poll, like, is this going to change people's mind? This will absolutely change some people's mind. Sure. The misgendering thing would have changed some people's mind, but not many. But it's so easy to write that off as like, oh yeah, but maybe in India Willoughby's a horrible person, or oh yeah, but maybe she deserved it, or maybe she's just misunderstood. Or, it's so easy to write that off. Oh, what, she just misgendered one trans person, so what? But this just different. It's definitely different. and it will have shaken some people. And I think, like, to this week's question, did you have this on your bingo card? The thing is, I didn't know if she was going to do this in 2024 or 2025 or 2026. And I think from my point of view, one of the things I'm interested in is how fast was this going to happen? Not would she ever get there, or does she believe this? Because this is just like, this isn't new. This isn't shocking to me at all. Everything JK Rowling said, all of the arguments she's made, I encountered in 2016, 2017.
Right. Within the gender critical cult, I think it's important.
From the gender critical movement, from all the same people making the same arguments. And they were always, the people making, like, the figureheads of the gender critical movement in that time were still trying to appear really, this propaganda and optics was really important to them, because they wanted to come across as a feminist movement, and they wanted to come across as like centrist or left wing, or at least not far right. And so this kind of stuff, they just didn't comment on it, because often their little, the minions and the goons would say this stuff, and you'd have an argument with them, and you'd tag them in and be like, this person that you've been promoting and liking is making this argument, claiming that trans people weren't victims of Nazi war crimes. Do you agree with that or not? And they wouldn't address it. I never managed to even get them to say yes or no, or to, like, rarely they would deflect, but often they wouldn't even want to deflect because they didn't want to acknowledge it and like make a scene around it. And I always read that as them agreeing but not wanting to make a scene, because if they did, it might go into the newspapers, might undermine the movement. And lots of the bigger gender criticals have kind of referenced this over the time, but like over the years, and just subtly, or just like liking a comment or whatever. But now JK Rowling has just kind of come out with it. And so it's not a surprise to me that she thinks this at all. Like, I think it's just normal. It's a normal gender critical belief. I think this is the mainstream gender critical belief. And it certainly is now. If it wasn't 3 days ago, it is today. But what I guess I am interested in is that it's probably taken her about as long to go from her first whatever pushed her to care about trans rights to this as it did Graham Linehan. I think she's just 2 or 3 years behind him. And that's quite interesting, because I didn't really predict that. I think I was wrong about that, because I always thought that she would try and maintain more of a proper... dignified. Yeah, she would more try and do that angle. And she's just thrown that away. But what this does mean is that this will test the waters. The next couple of days, we'll see how it goes. And then all of the mainstream gender criticals will say this. Like, this will be their new average position. And you saw that with the misgendering thing. Lots of the big gender criticals would avoid saying any pronouns for, like, bigger trans activists. They would just refer to us by our name all the time. And now, since JK Rowling's gone for India Willoughby, they're just straight up misgendering. And that's not a big deal. You all know they think that. You all know they do that all the time. But it's about what they do to, like, the newspaper class, to the wider public. And so that's what's changed here. So in one sense, this is terrible, because now this is going to be like a thing that a huge portion of the world believes. Certainly a huge portion of the British public will have just, this is their new thing they believe as of yesterday. But the other thing is that lots of people will be like, oh, okay, maybe it wasn't hyperbolic to say that she was a bad person after all.
I hope that's the effect. I really do.
Some will for sure. But the fact that it came...
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry. The fact that it's come one day after the NHS, at least in the short term, banning puberty blockers for trans kids, means that there's a lot of focus on trans issues. And obviously this is all part of the election cycle and stuff. I don't think JK Rowling's tuned into the election cycle, but certainly the puberty blockers news was, it's heating up, it's going to get bleak, this is definitely going to make things worse for everyone. But more people know now. Like, the fact is, there will have been a lot of people who saw a certain group of people celebrating that puberty blockers were banned. And then within 24 hours, literally all the same people are now the Nazis the Nazis actually like trans people. The Nazis invented trans people. There's going to be a lot of people who are just like, oh, okay. Even if they're still like, oh, maybe I still believe all the conspiracy bullshit about puberty blockers. I don't like where this is going. I'm going to step back. So,
Yeah,
I don't know. We'll see.
maybe we'll have the opposite effect of insulating the cult, sort of exposing some people to the levels of extremism that are so deep within. But yeah, if you guys want to get involved in that conversation, definitely go check out that poll. Let us know what you think. And we will talk about those results on next week's show. But we have some callers on the line. There are some announcements to get to, but let's take a caller first. How about we talk to... all right, let's just go with the first one. Jack in Essex. Pronouns are he, him. Jack, you are live on the line. What's going on?
Oh, fuck. Hello. Hi.
Such a British introduction. Oh, fuck. Excellent, Jack. What do you want to talk about this week?
I did have to refrain from the oi blood, I'll shank you, but yeah. So I'm in a bit of a situation which I feel like I kind of know how to approach, but I just don't trust myself. So I don't know if the subject comes up, but basically for context for callers, so I am I'm bisexual, a raging bisexual apparently. I got called that by a turf on Twitter, so I'm sticking with it. And I've started talking to a trans woman. So the thing is, like, to me, I very much respect trans women as women, and that's genuinely how I see them. But like, I guess I'm sort of familiar with. I know a lot of trans women have this problem where, like, a guy's said, like, like say they've mentioned that they're trans, and the guy says in utter facepalm, like, "Oh, don't worry, I'm bisexual," and it's like,
yeah.
Although I wouldn't make that fuck up, I kind of like. I think because at the moment she doesn't know I'm bisexual, so like I'm worried about mentioning it, like coming across as like I'm bisexual, so that's why I'm fine dating you, sort of thing. I guess really I wanted to call in and ask this because obviously I know that Arden's dating Matt, so I was wondering if maybe there was like any, if this was a problem at any point, / like if there's anything you'd suggest.
Well, just based on what you've said so far, I don't really have. I don't think most trans women would object to dating a bisexual man in and of himself. It's more of the framing. If like you were saying, if they say, "Oh, I'm trans," they're like, "Don't worry, I'm bi." That is a different context because that's basically just suggesting that they're like less of a woman, right? But I think for a lot of trans women, the notion of dating a bisexual man is often like a little bit of a anxiolytic, like it's anxiety relieving because you're going to be dating someone who's already probably wrestled with some sense of internalized shame and how society views their sexuality. They've already done, presumably, if they're out as a bisexual, some of that work to not be insecure about dating you as a person. So I don't think, from what you've said, that I noticed anything that I could really like help you with. I think it sounds like you're pretty aware of trans issues and your own sexuality, and I think that's a good place to start. The big thing I would add is just like really staying on top of communicating with your partner. I think we as trans people sometimes we're fetishized in a way where people make assumptions about what things we might be interested to do with our bodies when it comes to having like romantic sexual relationships. And I think, being on top of communicating with what she wants, what she likes and what she's into, and not trying to just make assumptions is going to be helpful to making sure that she feels respected and like seen throughout that process.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, it's just like my immature brain, but when you were saying about what she was into, she actually works in IT, so I feel like that's like really like on the fucking nose. It's like, yeah, it's like
What,
I mean,
trans girl in tech? Is that what you're trying to reference?
Yeah, every I was
Yeah.
going to say
Yeah,
every
okay,
trans
yeah.
woman works in IT.
it was like, well, couldn't have made this up if I tried. But no, that helps. I mean, yeah, I guess really it was just sort of like, I was kind of thinking about it in work earlier, and I was kind of like, am I over worrying about this, or like, you know, or will it be fine? Like, I don't know. I think I just needed something to, like, you know, slap me a little bit.
No, that's so scary. I think it's a fair worry to have. I think the like ultimate goal. I mean, I don't know where you see this going, and maybe this is just like a short-term dating thing or whatever. But if it was to turn into a long-term relationship, then this is the kind of thing eventually you would just talk about, and you could even do it in the context of, oh, when we first met, I was really worried that I'd say something stupid or whatever, and you can have this conversation that you've just had with us, and then all that stress goes away, and you when you trust each other enough, and you can say, oh, this is how I see you, and I was worried about miscommunicating that. That's probably a good thing. I guess the issue is you don't necessarily want to, on the first date, do that, because then sometimes it might seem too defensive, or like, why are you thinking of this first, like all this kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
I mean, I think as long as you just, I mean, it sounds like you're aware of the classic trope, and just be aware of similar things like that, then you'll probably be fine. And yeah, as long as you're thinking of that, it's usually quite clear. For I get quite a lot of guys messaging me, saying, "Oh, Katie, I met this trans girl and I don't know how to talk to her." And there's like, there's obviously, I don't ever want to say anything's a binary, but there is a bit of a binary between the type of guys who would be like, Katie, I want to have sex with a she-male, and I want to know, I want to know, do they like football and pints? And I'm like, oh my God. And then the other type are like, Katie, I've met this beautiful woman and she's amazing, and I'm really worried about upsetting her because I've seen other men be really crude towards trans women before, and I've been watching all, and I'm just like, I think that these two groups, they're maybe one of them is worried that they're in the other group, but they're not even close. So, it's one of those things that if you're worrying about it, you're probably okay. And if you're not worrying about it, then maybe you should be.
For sure.
Yeah. Also, can I just throw in, because I know you're a metal fan, Katie, and obviously Varg has just come up out of nowhere in
Yes,
this whole
has.
debacle. So obviously, so if callers don't know, he was in a band called Mayhem. He's a bit of a prick otherwise, but yeah.
Wait, hang on, Jack. Let me just communicate this properly. Varg Vikernes is like one of the most notorious, infamous metal musicians of all time. He's famous for murdering his bandmate, setting fire to a church, getting arrested for being a white supremacist in France, marrying a girl who wasn't 18 when they met, being a general white supremacist, creating a racist version of Dungeons and Dragons. He's like a full-on, a bit of a prick, doesn't quite cover. He's like a full-on bellend, but he... JK Rowling's made some other snide comment about people not buying her books. She was like, oh, well, I don't care if you buy my books for reading them or for paperweights or whatever. It still makes me money. Ha ha ha, on top of my pile of gold or whatever. And Varg Vikernes replied, ever since I learnt you weren't woke, I realized that I could buy your books and my son has read them all. Which is just incredible to seeing. Like, as a metal fan, it probably doesn't mean that much to non-metalheads, but any metalhead seeing Varg Vikernes praise JK Rowling, it's just like such a fucking moment. My favorite moment of the day. But anyway, Jack, sorry, you were saying something.
Oh, yeah, no. I was only going to say, do you know Charles Hedger, the guitarist? I think he joined at a later date.
No, I didn't.
He was he was a guitar tutor at my college, as well as the Offspring's touring guitarist. Yeah.
Yeah.
And my because I didn't have him as a teacher, but I did have Jim Davidson, who was the touring guitarist for the Prodigy. I just thought that was really cool. I literally only found out last week. Like,
wicked.
He
That's
never
a cool
mentioned,
fact.
like, Prodigy is just one of those bands that I'd never really heard of, and it's like, oh, Okay.
Well, they're good.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Yeah. Anyway,
yeah,
Jack, I would love to talk to you about music all evening, but this is the trans call-in show, unfortunately. Do you have any more concerns about this lady who you might be seeing? And if not, we'll probably move on to another call about trans people.
not really. I think that was pretty much it. I mean, she said she didn't have a blowhide, the shark plushie, so I guess that's...
Oh, is she really trans then? She might be a cis woman pretending.
Yeah, fucking.
But see, you already know about like some trans in jokes, so you should be okay.
Yeah, for real. You're gonna be fine.
You know they sell mini bloweyes now. They're like 30-centimeter bloweyes. Maybe that's a great first date gift.
Oh my god, I'm probably gonna get slapped, but worth it.
Well, call back next time and let us know how it goes.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
It was good to talk to you.
Thank you. See you soon, guys.
Thanks,
Bye.
Jack. Bye. Alrighty, I do want to keep rolling and getting to more callers, but I have some announcements to make, and I have to pull up this schedule, so I'm gonna riff.
You don't have to
make.
You don't have to make them. You're excited to announce them.
I am so excited to announce
Super
for
fucking
you.
hype. Arden, tell me about them.
Wait, hold on.
I'm ready.
I am so excited to announce for you guys the next week of shows on the line. Okay, so first, this Sunday is gonna be Matt and Jimmy on the Sunday show, where they like talk about God and stuff. It's gonna be so good. Then on Monday, it's gonna be Forrest Valkai with Aron Ra. If you saw the last one, you're gonna be hyped about this one. It's gonna be amazing. Now we've got another episode of Chewed Gum this Tuesday at 6 p.m. Central Time. And it's a new, not new. Fuck, man, I lost it. Goddamn. Erica Gutsa-Gibbon is going to be on Chewed Gum with Alyssa Lube. That's going to be really fun. I'm just going to keep saying everything's fun. Everything's so fun.
So fun. Oh my God.
The Hang Up next Wednesday is going to be Matt Dillahunty and Nick Fish from American Atheists. They're going to be talking about AACon.
Nick Fish. That's such a good name.
It is a good name, isn't it? And then next Thursday on Takis, I know we were thinking of having Dr. Ben on and doing a late show, but I know that might be up in the air now. So I think next week is sort of a mystery for Takis as of right now. But hopefully we will get that worked out and let you guys know by Sunday what the plan is. But how about we do caller 6-4?
Yeah, let's do it.
That one might be a little spicy. All right, we're going to talk to Benjamin in Texas, right here in Texas. Benjamin, you are on the line. What's going on?
Hi, yes. It's an honor to be back. I meant to call in previously, but hey, I'm glad to be back at the very least.
Amazing. Awesome. What do you want to talk about this week, Benjamin?
I'd like to talk about the whole idea of pronouns in general. Now, I'm cis with he, him, and I don't know what a trans person's perspective is like when it comes to that sort of thing, and so from a trans person's POV, what is the importance of pronouns to them?
I mean, I think there's a lot of layers to it, right? So, like, for one, I inhabit, a lot of spaces where people might presume I'm cis, and if somebody decided to come up to me and call me he and him and sir in those spaces, that would out me and potentially risk, like, my safety or my privacy or any other number of things. So there's, like, a safety and privacy risk associated with pronouns in some cases. But I also think it's just about respecting people. Like, when people, want to be called by a certain name, most of the time for cis people, we just kind of adopt it and don't really think about it. And it's not really controversial. We don't ask what the point is. We just do it because that's what that person wants, and who really cares? It doesn't really affect you at all. And I think largely pronouns feel like that to me, where, like, when it comes to, like, some of the neo pronouns or it's, I might have some sort of emotional reaction to them or not really understand why someone would do that. But I don't really care deeply enough to, like, on the list of things that I think are affecting society and trans people specifically, like, that is so far down on the bottom of the list. It's just not going to be worth my time to really invest a lot of energy into that. But yeah, those are my initial thoughts. How about you, Katie?
Yeah, I mean, to the question, like, what do pronouns mean to trans people? I think they can mean a lot. I think that it's very easy, not at all disagreeing with what Arden just said. I agree with what she said, but it is quite easy for me and Arden to say, our pronouns don't really matter that much. That's because, like, every single person I meet just calls me the right thing without even questioning it. And that's been the case for years now, and it's just so I don't think about it. And I think that's probably true for you too, Benjamin. Like, most people have probably always called you the pronouns that you think fit you, and maybe you've not even considered that they might be wrong because people have just called you things and you're just like, yeah, okay, cool. I mean, lots of people don't even think about that at all. And you often see these people who are offended by trans people and offended by pronouns being like, I don't even use pronouns. And then all the replies are like, you've just used a pronoun.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about? I just searched for it. And people don't know because it's just such a normal part of language. But if it is something where people are getting them wrong for you all the time, either because they don't know or because they're transphobic and they want to insult you or they want to hurt you, it could, it can be quite important. The thing is, it's like, I think using someone's right pronouns is a bit like a sign of basic respect. Like, if someone comes in and offers a handshake and you just like spit on their hand or something, that is so disrespectful. Like, the thing is that, or even if maybe we'll just take it back, not spitting on their hand, but if someone's like smiling and offers you a handshake and you just deadpan look them in the face, look down at their hand and look back at their face and be like, what do you want? The idea, like, oh, someone didn't shake your hand, are you offended? Oh, someone didn't shake your hand, oh, it's not a big deal. Like, yeah, okay, it's not a big deal that people don't shake my hand or don't give me a hug or whatever. Like, actually doesn't matter at all. But in that context, at that time when you met someone, what they're saying to you is, I do not respect you. For whatever reason, for whatever the context is, there's some kind of social contract that most people know, and if someone's smiling and saying hello and you do the same thing back, and then it just is like saying, oh, we're all on the same page here, we can have a conversation. And calling someone the right thing, like calling them the right name and the right pronouns, is just another thing like that. If someone, because I do encounter people who misgender me all the time. They're just all on the internet. But when they do that, they're not, I mean, they will be like, oh, I'm just saying the biological truth. They're not doing any of that. They literally are just trying to tell me that they disrespect me, that they want to upset me, that, they're going out their way to be horrible, basically. And that just says to me that they don't respect me, and so their opinions are worthless. And it's any conversation we're going to have, instantly they've started off by saying, I don't respect you. And so I think that if you're in a position where maybe you've just come out, or you don't pass, or you don't want to pass, or you're surrounded by people who are transphobic towards you, having people constantly call you the wrong thing can sometimes just constantly remind you that you're not respected as a person like everyone else is. And that can be really grating, and really, it can really weigh you down. So I think they can mean a lot. But like Arden says, as far as trans rights go, if you've got people in your life who, as a trans person, speaking as a trans person, if you've got people in your life who love and support you, and you've got a job and you're able to, live, then having some people misgender you is stressful, but it's not as important as, say, access to healthcare, or access to, or like being able to have a job, or being able to live somewhere, or being able to feed yourself. Like, those are more important, and those things affect trans people a lot. So I don't know if that answers your question, Benjamin, but hopefully the short answer is they're kind of important, but they're not the most important thing.
Yeah, I know they're not the most important thing, but that's the thing, though, is I live in Texas. I live in a red state. Things are going to shit over here, and that's kind of why I wanted to delve into that. It's just, well, that's just one thing, but I know it's not important. But at the same time, we, in Texas, there's just people who aren't, like, willing to understand, and well, at the very least, at least from the right, I more often than not see. And so they want to like bring up all these straw man statements and say that, oh, they and them is not singular, when I'm pretty sure they and them has been used in a singular sense.
The 12th century.
Yeah.
And then they want to bring up like all sorts of other straw man in an attempt to like not validate that one person, and they just be a misgendering jerk. And that's the thing, though, is it's more than that.
Yeah,
But again,
yeah.
I mean, like,
go on, Arden.
I was just gonna say, I'm also in Texas, and like I mentioned before that I do like reptile expos, right? I go to these events a lot. I see a lot of people who know my face, but they don't really know anything about me personally. And they all gender me correctly. And so I just kind of assume that they think I'm cis. Maybe they think I'm trans and they're all respectful. But as you pointed out, we live in Texas. So I think it's probably more likely that they're assuming I'm cis. But I will say I do find that generally when people come to like you first and know you as a person first and then kind of find out you're trans later, that does a lot to undermine a lot of their preconceived notions and the kind of like refusal to gender people correctly that you're seeing. I think really most people, when they're actually in the situation to gender someone correctly or use their pronouns, it is just not something they actively care about. And even people who are starkly anti-trans, you'll notice, have to like actively misgender, because in their brains, those people like the trans women exist as women, and they have to be like, well, she said, I mean, he said. You'll notice them like correct themselves, quote unquote, in the wrong direction. I really do think that even for some of the most hateful trans people, pronouns are really not something that they actually care a lot about. I think, like Katie said, you'll see them weaponize it a lot because they think it's going to hurt you and they think they're going to get a rise out of you. But like, I don't know. Pronouns are such a passive part of the English language. It's really hard for me to believe that anyone really cares that deeply.
They don't.
About
it's just
pronouns.
a sign.
Yeah.
It's a sign they don't respect you. And it's like you were talking about these arguments, Benjamin, where they say like, oh, they, them isn't singular or whatever, or they just come up with some of the bullshit about like none of that really is what they think. None of it really matters. And it doesn't matter then whether it's true or false. If they say, I'm not going to use they, them because it's not singular, and you're like, oh, Shakespeare used it as a singular, it's like 1,000 years old, they're not going to be like, oh, okay, I apologize. In that case, I do respect trans people, because the reason that they're saying these bullshit arguments is because they already disrespect trans people, and they're just trying to come up with an excuse because they don't want to say, I don't respect trans people, because it just makes them sound like an idiot. Whereas that's the reality of it. And like Arden says, often when they meet people, then they are sometimes forced or sometimes tricked into respecting them as an equal human. And once you do that, it's very difficult to just change. It's such a, if you're in a group situation, like you're at some kind of reptile expo or whatever that Arden goes to, you're not just in a one-on-one situation. You're surrounded by people, and if you're the one who starts misgendering people and starts like being hostile and confrontational, even if people agree with you there, they're going to be like, whoa, why is this person being a fucking hostile knobhead? Like, people don't like commotion. People don't like the fuss. So I think that's why, people just kind of get on with it. And sometimes people will show you direct disrespect in person. Like, this is something you experience as a trans person and also as a woman. People will, like, in a one-on-one, will directly disrespect you. And then when there's a group of people, they won't, because they're a coward. And sometimes you have it in the direct opposite way round, where they'll pretend to really respect you, and as soon as there's a group, they'll disrespect you. But, there's different reasons for those things. But, yeah, I don't know. Does that comment to what you're saying?
I mean, it does. It's just, there's too many knobheads over here, as you just stated, and they just don't want to admit. So they try and circumvent it. They make up excuses about it, and
yeah,
it just
that's why when
highlights
I'm arguing
a
with
bigger
them,
issue.
yeah, whenever I'm arguing with them, if they say something I know the response to, like they them isn't a singular, I'd be like, Shakespeare used they them. But, and then I try and address the core issue. But you're not saying that because of that. You're saying it because you don't respect trans people and you don't think they should be equal members of society. And they'd be like, no, it's because something else. Like, oh, it's all a big conspiracy theory. And you're like, every single major medical organization recommends trans healthcare, so that is wrong. And the only reason you're saying that is because you disrespect trans people and you don't want them to be equal members of society. And you can just keep, focusing on the actual main issue. And if you don't have the knowledge, like some people will be like, they'll crack out something like the they them thing, or they'll say like puberty blockers are an experimental drug, and you don't happen to know that they first started them in the 80s. If you don't have a response to that, you can say, but it doesn't matter whether this is the claim you've made is true or not, because you don't respect trans people anyway. You don't want them to have healthcare whether it's safe or not. You don't want them to have healthcare full stop, regardless of any of the facts around it, because you don't respect them and you don't consider them equal members of society. So I think it's always worth trying to, like, if you're having an argument, to try and get to the root of it rather than letting them do that, because you can get so bogged down in all their little crappy excuses, and they love word games, and because it lets them argue and feel like they don't need to change their mind.
Right, the semantics gets pretty annoying, and I do want to hint at neo-pronouns, like people want to. This is the same group of people that also want to invalidate neo-pronouns and say they're made up. Well, all words. Words are general. We come up with new sorts of words and sayings all the time, and then they want to reject neo-pronouns, and that's just another thing they want to tackle on. I know it's not important, but more invalidation.
Yeah, I think
it is still important. Like it is a signal when someone misgenders me. It's like, well, they're not shooting me in the face. They're not, setting my house on fire. But they are still telling me that they don't respect me. And usually, when people don't respect you, the misgendering is not the last thing they're going to do. So it is still important to some degree.
And so, and it's just. Yes, Arden?
I was just going to say, I appreciate the conversation. It kind of feels like we're maybe coming around again. We do have some other calls to get to. So I just want to see, did you have anything else in this topic, or?
Right, that was basically it. I just wanted to, touch on that whole subject matter. In Texas, we have a lot of other issues. It's just that the whole pronoun debacle when it comes to these sorts of people is, really aggravating, and so I'm really glad we got to touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's why with all of these things, you need to have a one-sentence, quick response to it, and then bring the subject back to the core issue. Even if they're talking about something else, they'll be saying that, oh, we need to lower taxes for rich people, and you're just woke because you like pronouns. You'd be like, I don't like pronouns. I use pronouns because they're part of the English language like everyone else does. And taxing rich people is essential in order to make the state run properly. Just have a one-line answer and bring it back to the main topic. If they're insisting on misgendering someone, correct them every single time with a straight face, politely, and then go back to what you're talking about because it's really annoying. And then talk about the main topic. And that's, it's how... Maybe I'm just also a bit of a dickhead, but it's how you get through. It's not how you get through to these people. It's how you get to these people, which is a different strategy. Right. But I feel like that's the context in which you're bringing it up. Because if you want to get through to someone, the best way, kind of like Arden alluded to, is to get them to meet a trans person or realize they already know a trans person, or to maybe watch something with a trans person in and see that we're just normal. Yeah.
Right. I just wish these sorts of people weren't, trying to make up excuses for their nobbishness. But,
I know. They're the worst. That's like what people were talking about earlier, like Varg Vikernes. Piece of shit, absolutely. But he just says what he believes. You got to give him that. And all these people who believe the same thing as him but are too scared to say it, it's pathetic. If you want to call trans people the wrong thing because you don't respect us and you think we're subhuman scum or something, Just fucking say it. Don't try and give some root of the English language, words aren't made up bullshit about biological rubbish. None of that's the reason why you're saying this. You're saying it because you don't think I'm fully human and you're a piece of shit. So just say it. It's so frustrating. It's so frustrating. And that's why I'm kind of glad the way it's moving is... I mean, it's bad that people are getting more extreme, but it's also good because they're stopping hiding. So people can see who they really are.
Right, and that's about it.
Cool.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Arden. Y'all two are amazing. And don't let anyone else let you down, because y'all are the greatest.
Thanks,
Ben. Thank you.
Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.
All right. Thank you.
Oh, shit. So we have 5 callers on the line. I did close the lines because I forgot to mention we are redirecting the audience after to the Sometimes show over on Jimmy's personal channel, which starts at 6. So just to prevent us from having a 4-hour-long show.
That's good because I want to end it soon. So
yeah, we've been doing our shows, especially the Katie and me shows, have been going a lot longer on average. Yeah, so hopefully we won't be 4 hours, but we're gonna. All right, let's see. I think we're just gonna keep taking them in the order that they're in. Yeah, let's take Corin or Coran. Corin.
I would like to do 10
totally
5
butchering
at
your
one
name.
point, but yes.
You are live in the UK. Please correct my pronunciation.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Oh, good. It's Corin.
Corin. Okay.
Hi,
it was
Corin.
right the first time.
What do you want to speak about?
Should have just trusted it.
First time caller.
Excellent.
I've been listening to you for several weeks now and found a lot of your comments really, really deep and very, very useful, so I can understand myself more. And I really do thank you both for that, and it's been incredibly helpful for me. And I'm now kind of 71 this year, and I really want to offer some of my experience back to other people.
Yeah, please do.
It was kind of when I was in my very, very young, kind of about before, after I went to a secondary school, and I asked my parents. I knew that there was something about me that I didn't fully understand, and I said, "Can I wear women's clothing during the home times?" In other words, if I went out the door to school, I would be dressed as a boy, but at home, I would be dressed as a girl. But they didn't understand what I was asking, and they said, "No, you can't do that." So there was a kind of difficulty with me expressing who I truly am, and I was bullied at school and at work for decades really, for who I wanted to be. And it kind of coming back up to the year 2000 and so on, is that I realized that there was something about me that people didn't like. Eventually I discovered, after a lot of internal work, I discovered that I'm incredibly empathic, and I can sense people's energies and their feelings, and that though I worked out that I became a mirror for people. In other words, when I stood in front of someone and I could detect what they were feeling, they didn't like me being in their presence because I was reflecting back to them their own pain. And that was incredibly difficult to deal with before I realized that was what I became, because I was, it's a North American Indian term called Heyoka, and they are the sacred clowns and the healers. And that, for me, became a very powerful idea, and it explained an awful lot to me about who I actually am. And now I do healing work on people, doing Reiki and actually listening to them to do a lot of bringing them out, going through my own pain experience and actually drawing their pain out. And what I kind of look at was Albert Einstein had a...
Hang on a sec.
Yeah.
How do you... I guess I'm interested in your perspective. like as a trans person who's been closeted for most of your life, or for some of your life, by the sounds of it, I guess I would love to hear more of your story. I just, we want to keep this on a trans theme.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
I also, Corinne, well, I appreciate your story, and I'm sure that you have like a lot of good like advice and experiences that you could offer to like the trans community. And I do want to say that this show is meant to be more of a conversation and more of like a question. And while I'm not trying to like say that your story is not worth it or anything, it's not really exactly the format here. So is there like a question underlying this, or something you wanted to like impart upon the audience, or could we try to hone in on that maybe?
Well, what's come out of my experience is the term "be the pebble," and I just wondered whether you understand what that means, whether you have an opinion about what that means.
I don't know that phrase.
You
How
don't
does
know
it
that
relate
phrase.
to being trans? Yeah.
What happens when you throw a pebble into still waters?
Splop.
You get ripples.
Yeah.
And what my sense of me, and this is why I wanted to have a conversation with you, is to impart some of my knowledge and really just say that being the pebble, I found that the changes I made within myself were so profound that I started to ripple out that energy to people, and they started to shift as well.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say that I share the. I mean, Corinne, I'm not sure how long you've been watching. We are definitely a very atheist, secular type show, so I'm not sure I relate to the energy aspect. But I will say, I do think one of the more impactful ways to change people's minds about trans people is to just exist in that space around them, and I think that alone can be really impactful on people. And I think that is probably the angle you're trying to come at with this.
Yeah, I think it's one of the. Sorry, it's one of the things that I say a lot. I get lots of people message me, worrying, saying what can they do in their life to help fight for trans rights and stuff. And I guess say similar to like being the pebble is, if they live their own life as a happy trans person, then that will just reflect on so many people that they meet, that at least some of those people will change their mind, and then maybe those people will then change someone else's mind second-handedly, if that's a term. And that does make more of a difference than I think we realize.
Well, being yourself actually has a greater impact on others.
Yeah, for sure, it definitely does. I think more than any argument you can make, because most humans aren't rational, and they don't actually just listen to facts and logic. Most people don't give a shit about facts and logic. What they care about is whether the person in front of them is empathetic, like you were saying you are, and whether you're able to like get on. And when they realize that you're trans as well, then they're like, oh, I was told all trans people are horrible, but actually this one's quite nice. And then that makes a big difference.
It's kind of the sense of experience that I've been through is that I can actually see Kemi Badenoch. You know who that is, but
yeah.
Arden won't be. I can actually have sympathy for her.
Oh well, that's lucky because I do not. For anyone who doesn't know, Kemi Badenoch is one of the worst politicians in the UK. She's obviously gender critical, but she's also all the other things because, of course, she is. And she has real position of power. I can't remember what her current role is, but it might be equalities minister. Whatever it is, it's a complete joke because she's a piece of shit person. But I'm glad that some people have some kind of sympathy for her and understanding. Because I don't.
It's kind of I kind of have to listen to the quote some time ago. I can't remember who said it. It was hurt people. And the idea that someone, in order for them to express themselves in a particular way, like politicians and Kemi Badenoch, is they must have been hurt in some. They learn that experience, and that changes them into who they've become. So I prefer to look at
It
the
does.
soul of the person.
Yeah, I mean, it does,
rather
but
than
the
the
issue
personality.
is, if I met her in the pub and she was no longer in power and she was regretful and, you know, had wanted to change or whatever, I'd be straight up there being ready to be sympathetic and empathetic. I overly forgive people to a fault throughout my entire life, leading to all kinds of problems. But when she's actively in a position of power, going out of her way every single day, pretty much her job is to try and take human rights away from people and cause people suffering. I don't really care why she does it. Like, I don't care, you know, if she had a terrible childhood and that's caused her to be a Nazi piece of shit, then I'm sorry to hear that for her, but some other people who had terrible childhoods aren't equalities minister campaigning to remove equalities from people. So, you know, I can have some kind of general human respect for everyone, but I have I only have limited energy to empathize with people and to spend my time being concerned about other people's lives and you know trying to make I spend a lot of my energy trying to improve other people's lives. People DMing me all the time with worries and stuff, and if I'm also using some of my emotional energy up on Kemi Badenoch or Rishi Sunak or Donald Trump or something, like, I'm wasting my energy, I'm wasting my time, because she doesn't give a fuck. She's not going to change. It doesn't even know who I am. I don't know. I think that one of the things, I mean, maybe you'll disagree, or maybe you've just grown in a different direction, but I feel like I've grown, or maybe I'll grow out of this, and maybe you're just more experienced than me, but I feel like I've grown into the position of knowing when to stop empathizing with people, because otherwise I empathize with everyone all the time and it burns me out, and I waste all my energy feeling sorry for horrible people. And I've now got to the point in my life where I can just be like, no, fuck them. That person is a horrible person, and I don't need to care for them. But maybe you've gone in a different direction.
I just don't want to carry all the anger that I've been carrying for 70 years, and that's what, you know, I've had to work through that, because I completely misunderstood totally who I was before the year 40, when I was 40, up to that point, and then suddenly something happened to me, and I could see the value of those experiences because it provided me with who I am now. And I think that when you have those experiences, looking back, I think some trans people kind of deny their past life effectively because they don't want their name to be remembered. And I kind of, for me, it was an important aspect of that was to acknowledge where I'd come from. So my name Corin is actually a mixture of Karen, which is my female name, and Colin, which is my birth name. And so I can't deny, which is what I wanted to do. I wanted to deny the past. I wanted to be female, but denying the past for me wasn't the easy way, because all it did was cover it all up. I needed to process it in some way. I
totally agree with that. I think I'd done the same thing. There's obviously details about my life that I don't really talk about, but not because I'm ashamed of them and not because I'm hiding them, because every single day of my life is part of the reason why I am who I am today, and I'm proud of surviving them all. So I think one of the things that I think guided me personally on this, and I'm sorry, I'm not just trying to talk about me while you're trying to talk about you, I'm just trying to, share experiences here as well. But one of the things that guided me on this, one of the things that guided me on this is I feel like I lived with a secret my whole life. And it was just burning into me constantly. And finally, when I told everyone my secret and I no longer had any secrets, it was such a relief. And then the idea to going back to having a secret where I hid who I was, I just was like, I'm never going to do that. And that's why I decided no matter wherever I ended, early in transition, I always thought no matter where I end up, I'm never going to go totally stealth and cut off contact with all my friends and stuff because I love all my friends, but also because I just don't want any more secrets. And I think that's allowed me to, not carry this rage around thinking I wish I had transitioned earlier, because I still do sometimes, but also if I did, then my life would be very different and maybe I wouldn't be who I am today. So, yeah, maybe you feel the same.
Well, it's important to honour who you've become, because of, if you don't do that, then you still carry a backpack full of anger.
Sure.
That's been my experience, because I've not been listened to, not been heard by people. And when, I mentioned Reiki and healing, is that I do hear people. That's why I do the work that I do, so I can help others, trans and not trans, move into their self. And it does work. It really is a powerful process.
Corin, I appreciate your story. I really don't want you advertising your Reiki on here, because that's really something that you should call into one of our other shows about. Because I really don't want to get into a fight with you right now about what Reiki is and if you're actually healing someone. But I have a compulsion within me when I hear things like that I have to address it. And I've been about to explode like a bag full of potatoes every time you've mentioned the word Reiki on this show. And I want to be respectful to you because I do appreciate your story, but I have to tell you, this is not the place for it. And I'm going to erupt at the seams if we start talking about you actually healing people with Reiki.
Let me step in and say thanks for your call, Corin. We've had a good talk, and I'm appreciative of the information you've imparted, and we'd love to hear from you again. But for now, we've got 4 other callers on the line, so let's move on to those, and we'll talk to you another time. Thank you very much. Bag full of potatoes. That's worse than when I said obsessed with eggs.
You know what's bad is the phrase bag of potatoes in that sense actually came from like a viral thing from Simon Cowell on what is the OG singing show that made Kelly Clarkson who she is.
America's Got Talent.
Not America's Got Talent.
X-Factor.
Not the X Factor. No, it's American Idol. American Idol.
Rivals.
Yeah, on one of the auditions, they used to do those viral, like the bad auditions. And at one point he called a fat woman a bag of potatoes or something. And I wasn't using it in that context at all. But we've been watching a lot of America's Got Talent. And so for some reason, those wires got crossed. And that's what came out.
Explode like a bag of potatoes. Honestly, I'm glad you said that, because every moment of my life since coming up with an example of someone who's obsessed with eggs has eaten at my non-existent soul. So now we've both said something cringe as shit. Let's move on to the next caller.
Yep. Let's take this next caller. I did close the lines, by the way. If you're on the line currently, please stay on the line. We're going to do our best to get to all of you. But we aren't going to take any new calls. That way we can get to everyone who's here currently. So up next, we're going to take Kaya, I believe, in Minnesota. Pronouns are she, her. Kaya, you are on the line. What is going on?
Hi, Katie. Hi, Arden.
Hi.
Quite a bit. I'm not sure if y'all remember, but I called, I think, twice last year. Back in, March and April. I talked about my troubles as a teacher, as a trans woman who is a teacher.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, I remember.
Okay, good. Well, quite a bit has changed in a year. I am fundamentally a different person in the best way possible. I am so much more happier than I was last year. I could not imagine where I'm at now. So I'm starting with that for some positivity, because we need it.
Agreed.
Especially because, there's so much discourse about, transitions gone wrong on the other side of an argument that, doesn't feel like it should be an argument. Anyways, I'm going to get to the point of my question,
Go for it. what you
It's a perfect question for what we've been talking about today with some of the calls. Basically, I joined it's a gay bowling league, like historically, but it's been moving to be more accepting of individuals who are non-conforming gender, so non-binary folks are represented in bowling, which is like a very gendered sport. So it's trying to be a good league, and I've been bowling in it for 5 months. I got put on a random team with 3 cis gay guys and 1 cis straight guy. And I knew a couple of these people from before because I play other sports with them. Anyways, I thought I was friends with them for 5 months. We bowled. They loved the way I bowled. I was basically the best on the team, or second best on the team, so that helped.
That's because trans people have an unfair advantage at all sports. So.
Yes, it's true. Even though if you look at my average compared to the men in the league, it is not even close to the top. And again, this is a gay bowling league, so it doesn't even represent like the best of the best bowlers. Like, I'm not destroying the game or anything.
Just straight people are better at bowling, is what you're saying, because they bowl straight. Is that the joke? No, sorry, carry on.
No, that's a great joke. And so, anyways, it's been a while that I've been transitioning now, or it feels like a while, and it's going quite well. And I got a call for an orchiectomy. I scheduled an orchiectomy. I'm getting an orchiectomy in the next 2 weeks, and that coincides with the end of the bowling season. So I told my team, hey, I'm going to miss that date for surgery. And I made the mistake, I guess, of specifying that it was an orchiectomy. One of the cis gay guys responded back that the first comment was, ouch, that hurts. Okay. The second comment was, I agree, but I'm so happy for you. And that was the straight guy, who seemed to just agree with the ouch part because the first guy said it. And then the third guy says, don't do it. Sorry, this is actually said. I respect you and care for you. Don't do it.
That's so cringe. That is so cringe.
So I guess my question before I tell you more details is, how would have you responded? That happened a month ago. I am still dealing with the fallout now.
I definitely would have told him I don't give a fuck how he feels. 100%.
Yeah, I actually had something similar to this. I met up with some friends. It was some like trans protest or something, and it was just before I had face surgery. And there was a group of people. It was like, I think it was a feminist protest. No, it was a group of women in this table, and most of them I already knew from like online and stuff. It's like the first time we'd met in real life. It's cool. And one of them had maybe their girlfriend there, or a lady who was a good friend or something, but who I didn't know and didn't know from the internet or anything. And I said, like, everyone asked how I was doing, and I was like, oh, I'm really nervous because I got face surgery in like 2 weeks or something. And this lady was like, oh, I don't think you should do it because you have a really nice strong jawline and you could be betraying who you really are, and what if people don't find you attractive anymore? And I can tell you how I did respond, which was just to be like, okay, thanks, I'm going to go to the toilet now. And then I just went home. Because I can't deal with confrontation in real life. What I should have said was, excuse me, fuck off. Because, like, who the fuck says that? Like, how dare someone, when, like, if someone was like, oh, excuse me, can I have your advice, random stranger, on whether I should get surgery in the next X years or whatever, then maybe they can give their unwarranted opinion because I've kind of asked for it. When you just say, I'm having an orchiectomy, and one of them's like, don't do it, like, fuck off. Like, is it your body? Was I asking for your advice? Was I asking for your opinion? Are you a doctor? Do you know what you're talking about at all? Or are you just someone who is incapable of imagining other people exist? Like, you just being like, oh, if that was me, I wouldn't like it, and I am the only person, so I must not like it.
Exactly. I was going to say, that is exactly it. It is I think the ouch reaction, I wouldn't be bothered by that because it's an innate human thing. You have mirror neurons when people say something is going to happen to you, that they like internalize how would I feel if that would happen to me. The ouch reaction, I think, is perfectly justified, but
and this thing up
don't
a joke,
do it.
You could just be like,
the I respect you, don't do it is what's completely off base, because it's like, you clearly don't respect me and you're just having your own emotional reaction that you are projecting onto me. If you actually cared about me, you would reel that reaction back and think about the situation you were in before you spoke, and you didn't do that.
It's the exact same reaction that homophobes do when they're like, I love and respect you as a person, but I don't think you should be getting gay married. It's like, well, fuck off. You're a piece of shit. Like, if you don't want to get gay married, don't get gay married, mate. It's not. It's exactly the same.
So, what actually happened? How I actually responded? This came back up as like, I perhaps gave this man too much of my time. I haven't really encountered someone in a gay space or a queer space that has been so transphobic, right? Like, that was my first interaction with that. And it sucks because I'm going to have to play him in the softball league. But that's okay because my team is all trans and we're going to beat his ass and it's going to be great. I'm going to get all my friends to go.
Wait, sorry to just cut you off, but there is such a good joke here about how you used to go bowling and then you had orchiectomy and then you beat them in a softball league. Like, someone make a balls joke. Come on.
There's going to be a lot of balls jokes. So anyways, basically, the first person to clap back was the straight guy, and he just basically said it. Hey, it's the same thing with like abortion. It's their body, their choice. Doesn't matter what you think. Thank you, that guy. And then I said my thing, and then he didn't respond for 2 weeks. Everyone on the team said that was fucked up. It was fucked up. And
what did he say after the 2 weeks?
Well, you see, this message is the worst apology ever. And again, had I just said fuck off, we would have gotten to the root of the matter quicker. And this apology it's great. Oh wow! Oh, here it is. Hey, I was in no way trying to offend you or second guess your decision. I wouldn't be doing my job as your friend if I didn't raise my concerns over something so life-changing. The only reason I said anything is because I like you and want to be happy. And I have to show up to bowling like nothing happened? No.
No, you don't have to show up like nothing happened. You have to own that was your mistake and that you shouldn't have said. Yeah, no, I would hold his feet to the fire here. To me, if you don't say it was a mistake, I shouldn't have said it, I don't accept your apology. I've had people in my life who refuse to issue apologies where they're warranted, and I'm pretty strong on I just don't take that. Like, if your apology doesn't include an acknowledgement of you shouldn't have done that, it's invalid to me, because all you're trying to do is escape the blame and discomfort you feel for the regret that you feel about making that mistake. Yeah, that's fucked up. I suspected it would be something like that, but that shouldn't have happened. Well, I'm really sorry.
I mean, maybe you could say something like, well, if you value us, if you consider us good friends, then I will give you my advice as a friend is to never say anything like this to anyone ever again, because it doesn't come across as concern. Good. How did that go?
So I said that, and there's another trans person in the bowling league, and of course there's more in the softball league, and just in the gay sports community here. And he was like, well, if you would have not brought up your medical history, I would have not brought up my opinion. And I'm like, hey, I thought you said we were friends. If we're friends, I'm going to talk about this, right? Like, my friends know about this thing. It's huge for me. Like, for all I know, there's going to be a surprise party. Anyways, don't talk to him for another 2 weeks. And then I see him at bowling because we were trying to schedule it where he would show up 1 week and I would show up the other week because we had enough players to do that. But one week it just didn't work out like that. And also I thought like, hey, this will be my time to talk in person because we had not seen each other in person since then. And also like we could talk about it with the manager, the league commissioner, like, and perhaps even the other trans bowler in the league. So that way she could be like, hey, I have an orchiectomy. I'm doing great. What you're saying is fucked up. Never say it, right? It didn't work out that week. I basically just gave him a silent treatment, and then he had to go leave early when I wanted to talk to him after bowling. And then randomly this past Sunday, he says, hey, do you want to play darts? And I'm like, no, I want to talk. And because I wanted to get this settled, I still hadn't had a one-on-one. And so I met him at a gay bar at like 9 p.m. on a Sunday. I told him what was fucked up. He started off saying that he was sorry. I don't think he ever said that he shouldn't have said it, but that his intent was good. I'm like, are you sure about that? And then we played darts a little bit, and he still dodged the questions and everything. And so then I took him to the side of this gay bar because I saw a group of queer people and trans people like right next to us, and I didn't want the situation to pop off. So I moved him in the corner. I was like, hey, I need the real apology. Like Arden said, like, you should have never said that. In no way could you ever say that to a trans person and like be buddy with them. He didn't take it. He just said he liked balls twice. That was cringe. And then he said I didn't think enough about the surgery. And then at that point, I like puffed my chest out because I'm quite lucky on HRT and I got some honkers on me. And I knew he's a gay man. And I just like, that was my version of fuck off. And I think I said fuck off. I've been wanting to say it for a month. And because I don't want to get like thrown out of a league for being such a bitch, I just let him make a scene. He leaves the restaurant and this again, or the bar, this happened. And as he leaves, one of the trans girls in the group is like looking at me as I do it. And I wave bye, this transphobe, and I wave hi to her. And yeah, I told them the story and had a good night.
Man,
that's so weird. I like balls is such cope. It's so embarrassing. I cringe on his behalf so hard.
That is so cringe. It does make me think though, because there are, like we were saying earlier, there are some people who can only see themselves in positions. Like a lot of people's a lot of cis people's gender distress or like transgender distress is they want to ban trans healthcare because they imagine if it happened to them, it would be horrible. And so they can't imagine it'd be different for anyone else. But there are genuinely a lot of people, I mean, particularly men, and usually straight men, talking about trans men, who don't want someone to transition because they find them attractive, and then when they transition, they won't find them attractive anymore. I mean, if you go and look and see what Republicans say about Elliot Page, it is just exclusively that. He used to be sexy to me, and now he is not sexy to me. Therefore, we should ban trans healthcare. And that's like their full argument. But I think, you know, sometimes that comes out, and early in transition that can come where someone sees you one way and maybe they find you attractive, and as you start transitioning they suddenly realize they don't find you attractive anymore. They're like losing you. I'm not saying that's the case with you, it's hard to say, but I like balls. Like, do you need everyone you talk to have balls? How many balls of your friends have you actually seen? Do you interact with balls other than with people you have sex with? No, all of this is cringe, and it's the kind of thing you would say to someone, like, if you were really attracted to someone and they were going to get, like, a tattoo of a penis on their face and ask you for your opinion, you'd be like, you know, if it's like your partner, your husband was going to be like, oh yeah, I'm just going to, like, you know, get a tattoo of Margaret Thatcher on my face, I'd be like, well, please don't, because I actually like your face. But like, if it's not my fucking partner,
yeah. Also, Kaya, like, I just gotta say,
crazy.
If there's any consolation in this, that's the kind of thing that, like, I don't know about y'all, but there are a handful of memories that, like, I will just be going about my day showering, and all of a sudden it'll strike me, and a wave of self-hatred washes over me, like 15 years later. That's the kind of memory that does that to a person. And the only consolation I can think for you is that in 10 years, he's going to remember this just passingly in his day, and it's going to ruin the next 2 hours of his day. And I think that's a win for you.
I know what's going to happen. It's going to ruin him this summer when he sees me this summer. It's going to, you know, playing softball, and my hair's longer, and I'm loving my orky. when I play bowling next year and I'm wearing like tight like yoga pants, like the dude is gonna. I'm rent free in his head, and
Wait,
this
if
is a
you
warning
can
to
get
all
that
other
comment
people.
back, if you can get that comment back on him, like, oh, say you're playing like baseball or whatever game it is, play like, who wants to start batting? You'd be like, I'll start bowling because I like balls. If you can just like get something like that in, it'll be just so good.
Yeah.
Like in front of the whole room, but don't look at him. Like perfect.
Yeah. I guess just to like kind of wrap this up, in general, I guess kind of breaking a little bit larger discussion is this is about a gay man who's been in this particular gay community for a while and has been playing gay sports for a while, and there's other people like him. I guess my thing is, how much leniency should we give people not like him, but the people that defend him or think, oh, what he said wasn't a big deal? Like, I don't know. I'm finding that difficult, and I'm going to have to deal with that in my life.
In my experience, I just try and make people realize that I'm about to, and then try and make them uncomfortable in the same way. Like, oh, if you don't think it's a big deal, can we talk about your genitals in a derogatory way? I would actually like it if you changed your genitals to my liking. Can we have this conversation? They'd be like, what? They'd be like, well, there you go. Now it's fine. Now you know. Because sometimes people just need just showing that what they've done is wrong. They don't need to have, like, sometimes having a conversation and seeing if they can learn and understand and change their view and give you an apology. Sometimes that's good, but sometimes you just need to, like, squarely in front of everyone, humiliate someone once and then just move on. I don't know, maybe that's my style, but like if someone's like, oh, I don't think what he said was that bad, then just be like, well, yeah, let's talk about your genitals then. Like, explain to me what way we can change them so they're more attractive to me, because I like balls, you see. So and then if once they look a bit cringe, just be like, oh no, okay, well, we'll just talk about something else then, it's fine. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's pretty
my
good.
strategy.
I don't know. I have a hard time. I can be. I think it's a bit of a mistake in some ways, but I can be too harsh on this. Whereas, like, if somebody thinks that's okay, I'm like, cool. Then I don't need to interact with you. Like, I have a great set of friends. I don't need to expand it anymore. Of course, I like to meet new people and have connections with new people. But like, if I find out some people suck, it's really not a big deal to me to be like, okay, congratulations, you have entered the other, 8 billion people in the world who I am not friends with. Like, I don't know. But I realize it sounds like you're building like a presence in a sort of broader community, and that maybe you want to like tread more carefully with that. So yeah, I think being a little snarky and just kind of being like, just confident in this is what your position is. And, if you want to think whatever, that's fine. But, I think just being outwardly firm in what your position is and what you think is right can be more powerful.
If you're trying to be part of a community long term, then obviously you don't want to be, sometimes even if it's not your fault, if you're the person who makes the fuss, then people don't want to be around you because they just want everyone to just get on. And sometimes if someone defends some dickhead and you just don't talk about it, and then you just ride up the respect wave for the next 6 months, 2 years, whatever, then people will realize that your position was right and they'll come around to your position. I mean, like, I've had it quite a few times in my past, like in the metal community, where someone has been horrible to me, but they're friends with everyone else. And if I was to make a scene, then I risk being the person who's ejected because they've known this other person longer. And I like one guy in particular, I just rode out for years. I was like, this dickhead who was a piece of shit to me all the time. And then it got to the point where he was starting to annoy everyone else. And it just got to the edge of the cliff. And I just said one thing, and something cascaded. Everyone was talking about how much they hated him. I was like, if I had said this straight away 5 years ago, then maybe he would still be in the group. Now he's got no friends, dickhead.
Suck. Katie, I will say your mic was coming in and out, but last time this happened, it was just like a time issue, and like in a couple seconds it went back to normal. But I hope you were able to hear that, Kaya. I hope we were able to give you some thoughts.
Yeah, no, I will leave y'all to hopefully one more caller. I will say to Katie that metal is awesome, and I no longer my male liking it's on the decline. So
Wow.
there has been progress.
I'm ashamed to have
great
helped
day.
you, Kaya. Get off of my show.
Okay,
Get
Arden.
out of here. You're done.
Team Arden all the way. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Okay.
Real quick before we take these last two callers, we're going to talk to Fro next and then Pip last, I think. I do want to let you all know that this Sunday we are having a live Patreon Q&A, and this week's host is going to be Jimmy Snow. Oh my god. You could have a live Q&A session with Jimmy Snow. You never get to do that. You should definitely do that. Go to patreon.com/calltheline. That is where you'll get your link to join the special patron event. Usually they last about like 2 hours, and there's just like a series of different questions that we just kind of, it's stuff we don't normally get to talk about, more like our personal lives, our hobbies, and our interests and stuff, rather than necessarily like addressing calls, although a lot of it does end up just kind of being like another call, because people will be like, oh, what do you think about this other issue that we would have talked about on the show. But yeah,
you can go off about Reiki or metal instead of having to talk about trans rights.
that would be a place where you could maybe get into that, although I'm willing to bet that Jimmy would still roast you about it.
Yeah. Just before we do move on to the next callers, I just want to say I did see someone earlier who was in a call queue who I wanted to talk to, who's dropped, who was saying that their parents were trying to talk them into conversion therapy.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're watching, if you hear this, or if someone knows them, or if they watch it back. Don't go. If you can avoid it, don't go. There are videos on how to survive conversion therapy, as in survive as in get through it unscathed, not conversion therapy is going to kill you. I'm not saying that, but conversion therapy is bleak and it can cause you long-term issues. If you can avoid it in any way, do. And if you go, then just don't open up to them. Give them as little as you possibly can.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're an adult,
they're going to try and,
I would just say don't go at all. If you're dependent on your parents in some way, I would say talk to friends and figure something out, because it is not worth it. It's a really harmful practice. But like Katie said, if you can't avoid it, definitely lie. I would look into local LGBT centers and see if they have any information that can help you. Because there might be more resources local to your specific area that I would check out first. But
and
yeah,
this might be one of those things that the transphobes will be like, Katy Montgomerie and Arden Hart telling people to lie to their therapists on the internet. Yes, I am.
To fake therapists.
If it's a conversion therapist, if it's a conversion therapist who isn't a real therapist and who is doing something immoral and dangerous, then yeah, lie to them. Just like if someone was mugging you at knife point and you thought they might stab you if you don't tell them what they want to hear, just fucking tell them it. Don't give them the truth for your life story. You've got to escape with your own health here. So every time you lie to a conversion therapist, the world's a better place, because they're pieces of shit.
100%.
So anyway, let's do the other two callers and end this show.
Let's take these last two calls. We'll take the first one. Fro, pronouns are he, him in Norway. Fro, you are live on the line. What's going on?
Hello. How are you guys doing?
Doing well.
Great,
what's
thanks.
going on?
Good. So I was thinking, when is it okay to call yourself trans? When in the transition period is it okay to call yourself a trans? Is it when you self have decided? Or is it when you're actively doing it? Or when is it?
I would say to call yourself trans is completely a self-identification situation where once you've realized that you feel like you're trans, or you feel like your gender is not the one you were assigned at birth, if that's the label that you feel fits with you, I think you can pick that at any point. You don't have to be along your transition. I think there are some considerations to make about the stage of your transition with regard to other things, for example, if you just took your first estrogen pill and you waltz into a lesbian bar and you think that it's going to be easy, not a problem, I think you might find yourself getting in over your head. But if you're just like, I'm trans, then yeah, you can do that whenever the fuck you want to.
Yeah, I'm gonna
So it doesn't-
maybe bore the chat. Sorry, Fro, Karen.
No, so it doesn't really matter when, where you are on the transition line.
Well, I think that it's totally context dependent, and maybe I'll bore chat by saying something that I've said a few times, but like, I only really care about labels in two situations. One is when you're just telling me on a personal level something about yourself, and the other is when we're combating systematic injustice. So when I meet people fairly often, like from the metal community, or now occasionally maybe from the Pokemon cards community, shout out to the one person who's watching, but and they might come up to me and by all appearances might be a cis person, and they will quietly take me to one side and be like, Katie, I like your internet presence or whatever, I'm trans myself, and I'm coming out soon, and I'm starting, like, when they're telling me that, what they're communicating is like they have some kind of intent in the future of, they may be planning to transition, or maybe they're just planning to come out, or maybe they're not planning. Like, I've met someone before who says, I'm trans, but I'm never going to come out because my living situation doesn't allow it, and they just want to confide in me, and they're saying, I think you're someone who has similar experience, and maybe we can talk about this briefly, and it will make me feel better releasing a secret to someone, that kind of thing. And when someone does that, it doesn't matter where they are in transition, because they're just telling me something, and they want to just communicate with me something that we can then have a conversation about, and that's fine. And the other time that I think it's useful to understand these labels is when we're talking about things like trans people are more likely to be sexually assaulted on the street than cis people are. That is a horrible fact, and it's not close. And when I'm talking about something like that, you can say, oh, well, what about this person? This person is, by anyone's first appearances, they would read them as a cis man. There is no way this person is more likely to be sexually assaulted on the street than the random cis woman. And I would say, yeah, okay, fair enough. If you haven't come out and you haven't started transitioning and no one is reading you as queer and etc., then you're less likely to be sexually assaulted than someone who has. But that's not really what I'm talking about, because when I'm saying trans people are more likely to be sexually assaulted, I'm talking about the group in general. I'm talking about transphobia being one of the factors in sexual assault, because sexual assault is usually about power and control, and trans people being a subordinate group to cis people is one of the reasons that's a factor, as is the reason why women are more likely to be sexually assaulted than men, and why gay people are more likely to be sexually assaulted than straight people. And now we can talk about these terms, these systematic forces, and see the patterns between them, and then maybe work towards combating them. But then when you might say, well, when is someone trans for when you're talking about this? And I'm saying it doesn't matter, because the reason I'm saying the word trans, the whole reason this label exists, is to just generally talk about a group and a force that exists. And I acknowledge that this term doesn't have strict edges, and if you pick an individual, yeah, we can have an argument about it, but it's not really important, because I'm talking like on population levels. So if someone's telling me their history, it's interesting to me because it's them, and it's a personal conversation. And if not, I'm talking about groups.
Right.
We could talk about what the true ontological definition of trans is, or what things you must need to meet in order to. But I don't care. Like, it doesn't affect the systematic injustice.
Doesn't matter.
And it doesn't affect.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's basically
my position. Does it matter when
position.
it comes to sport? Does it matter when it comes
when
to
someone
sport?
is trans? Well, the thing with sports is, depending on which sport it is and at what level you're playing, and
yeah, there are a million factors to consider.
There's a load of factors, but we can pick two examples at the extreme. If it's your local C team football players over 30s who play only on weekends when their kids are at their football practice or something, and it's just a group of friends, and you're like, and it's like a women's team, and you came out 6 months ago, and you've started transitioning, and you're new to the area, and you just want to make friends. Okay, like if anyone's going to start talking about unfair advantage or something, it's just bullshit. Like the point is here, you're trying to find people who you're going to get on with and who have similar experiences, and as you transition, you will have more in common and all this kind of thing. But then the other end of the extreme here is we're talking about, say, power weightlifting or whatever the term is, in the Olympics, world-class athletes, and in which case, it's not about when you're trans or not, or really how far you are in transition, whatever that means, because whether someone has had face surgery or whatever, you could say someone who's had face surgery when they plan to is further along in the transition than before they had it, but that doesn't affect the weightlifting. What affects weightlifting is,
it's muscle,
tendon strength and muscle strength and bone structure and balance and posture and funding and all of these there's millions of factors in it, but how pretty you are and how well you pass on your face isn't one of them. But so all we can do on those sports at those levels when it's actually important is to say, do some science and be like, what are the differences between men and women on average in these two groups? And oh look, hormones play a major factor, or maybe some sports they don't. And if they do, then we can say, oh, well, we can see that performance changes over 5 years, so you have to be on hormones 5. Whatever it is, we just need to do some science and then draw a line. And that isn't saying you're not trans until you've got to that point. It's not saying you haven't transitioned enough. All it's saying is we are looking at this sport and we inevitably have to make an arbitrary line at which people cross, because otherwise it's subjective. So we're picking an arbitrary point, and that's what you must meet in order to do the sport. We can argue about what that point is, but we're going to have to pick one. So, yeah, again, that doesn't really matter whether someone is really trans or not, I don't think. Like, ontologically, right. It just matters what the sport requires and what transition factors affect that sport. So
would you say that the term itself is movable in the way that it doesn't mean the same thing in sport as it does day to day, for example?
No,
I think someone's a trans person. Like if say we did, say we pick sorry to cut you off, Arden. Say we pick a sport and I don't know, like some futuristic magical super cricket or whatever it is in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and they determine that the only factor in performance in this magical space cricket is pelvis width or something like that. And we just say, oh, look, trans women who transitioned at 30 years or older will have absolutely no pelvis change in transition. And trans women who transition at 13-year-olds will probably have the same pelvis sexual dimorphism as cis women. So therefore, it doesn't matter what hormones you've been on. If you transitioned after this certain point in your life, regardless of how old you are now, you cannot play space cricket on the women's team. That doesn't mean you're not a woman. That doesn't mean you're not a trans person. That doesn't really mean anything. All it means is, in this one particular sport, the only factor is something that doesn't change in transition. So therefore, at the top levels, at the Olympics of super space cricket, or whatever it's called, I'm really annoyed I can't remember, that's what's just got to be. I mean, there's just got to be up true. It's the same with intersex people. Like, if there is an intersex condition that they determine using science and not bigotry is unfair for whatever reason, and we can have that discussion, they're not saying, well, ideally, they're not saying this woman isn't a woman. I mean, the gender critical movement is saying that, but I am not saying that. You know, they're just saying that the rules of sport have to be arbitrary. Like, sex isn't binary. We can't just measure something. It's inevitable. So we're just drawing a line. And I'm sorry if you're a woman who falls on the wrong side of this line. We've just determined that you're not fair to participate. And we can argue about that, and I'd love to argue about that. But, generally, I hope I'm communicating my point.
Yeah, I understand what you mean.
Okay, great. Question answered. Arden, what did you want to say? Sorry, I done loads of talking.
No, did you have anything like to add to that, or that was
No,
it?
that answers my question. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Thanks, bro. See you later.
Yeah, thanks. Fro's a good name, by the way.
It is a really
don't know
good
why.
name. Yeah, I like
cool
that name. So before we take this last call, just remember we are going to read super chats after this. Any super chat of $5 or more, we will read live on air for you all to see.
We need to know if you like balls.
Also, I have to end the poll. Exploding potatoes won over eggs by a massive margin. Almost. It was 62 to 37%. So go potatoes.
Goodness, I got wrecked. Okay, well, I do accept that what I said was more cringe than what Arden said. I tried to claw it back, but I was just more cringe. But we want to know if you like balls. Please super chat us $5 or more and let us know. Do you like balls?
Oh my god. Okay,
right, let's
last caller, Pip from the UK. Pronouns are they, them. Pip, you are live on the line. What's going on?
Hello there. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we got you. What's going on?
Fantastic. Yeah, what I wanted to talk about is something that's been touched upon in two previous callers today, and that is passive transphobia. Because my mum is in her 60s and she is Italian, and as such, English is not her first language. She is completely fluent in it. She's been speaking, English longer than I've been alive, and I'm 35 now. But there are just some aspects of the English language that she doesn't seem to get, and that is to do with my pronouns and using singular they, them. She is not someone who is overtly bigoted in any way, in that she doesn't think that, transphobes are, some sick men with trans people rather. I don't know about transphobes, that's a different conversation.
Some transphobes are, I assure you, they definitely have a fetish.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, she doesn't think that trans people have, this a weird fetish going on. And whenever it comes to binary trans people, who she's always been introduced to using those, binary he or she pronouns, then she doesn't have a problem with that. But she never seems to use they, them in a singular way. She is always misgendering me, because I'm assigned male at birth. And this has been going on for like 3 or 4 years now, since I came out as non-binary to them. And I tried so many different ways of explaining this to her, including having a sit down and direct chat with her, with one of my best friends who is a non-binary trans woman, and she seemed to be getting somewhere with that. And the thing is, I'm also a very empathic person. I want to see the best in people, and I'm sure you can agree, I don't want to assume bad faith when there isn't one. And I understand that English is a fucking difficult language. In fact, it's not one language, it's 3 languages stacked on top of each other, like a trench coat. But I know for a fact that that there are certain, intricacies, and singular they, them, no matter how all it is, just doesn't quite mix with people. And then when I tried to talk with her recently about why I am an activist, and not necessarily asking her to do the same, but just to understand where I'm coming from and why I feel I have to do what I do in advocating for trans rights. And this is the reply she gave me. I fully appreciate your willingness to fight against oppression, but beware that bigotry, in air quotes, is an attitude against dissent. Any side could suffer from it, not everybody fighting transgenderism is the same, and not all transgender activists are holy champions. If I were you, I'd study the issues the gay community has raised with trans activism. Lots we can learn.
Oh no!
I feel so bad.
Yeah.
The UK is so awash in propaganda that it's convinced people that there's actually a meaningful portion of gay people who feel that way, when it is just not the case.
Exactly. That is a complete myth that is being perpetuated because the Overton window has shifted. While obviously there is still homophobia, it is much less publicly acceptable than it used to be, especially back in like the mid 2000s when I was in high school, where the word gay was, you know, beaten over my head like a stick. And I'm really trying to help her understand why it's important to me that she uses they, them pronouns for me. And there are so many, you know, so many different, what should we call it? There are so many different contexts you could use they, them as singular, especially if you don't, if you don't know the person. But because she knows me, because, you know, I've been raised as male, as were my assigned gender at birth, it just does not seem to click, and I'm at a loss as to what I'm supposed to do from this point.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, I know my sibling came out as non-binary probably close to 4 or 5 years ago now, and my mom has gotten much better at using pronouns. If she's listening, hi mom. We've talked about all this stuff, so she's definitely gotten a lot better. But still, regularly, when my mom calls me, she'll misgender my sibling, and it's hard. Part of me thinks like, oh, I don't struggle that much, so I don't understand why it's so hard. Like, I've definitely misgendered people who are non-binary before, but I don't seem to struggle in the same way. But also that I remember that the first time I met a non-binary person was when I was like 14 at an actual like LGBT event. So, I mean, I've been exposed to it for a lot longer. And I really do think that, unfortunately, it is a time adjustment kind of scenario. But yeah, I think you also made a great point, Pip, that I think for most people, using they, them in singular is not actually an issue. It's using it for a person directly, you know, rather than like the impersonal pronoun way that we kind of use it when we're like, oh, someone left their jacket here. When you're using it directly for a person, it seems to be more of a challenge to individuals. I know there was some sort of like linguistics paper that talked about when they, them is being used for a non-binary person in the singular, that there were more instances of confusion about who the subject was. But that to me seems to just be an effective, again, time, because there are plenty of languages, sign language, for example. I know Japanese tends to be this way as well. Just saying the languages that I like actually know a little bit, where they're heavily context dependent. The same words in a different context can carry a completely different weight. And I think that with time, we'll eventually learn to understand the context where, you know, these words are being used, and we'll develop more sophisticated systems for understanding them. But yeah, it's unfortunate to say that I do think people are just uneducated at this point in time. And as you pointed out, you know, your mom, without being an overtly bigoted person, has consumed and bought into a key anti-trans propaganda point. If that's happening to normal, not overtly bigoted people, then I think it's also going to hinder our ability to make the kind of progress that we're talking about. But I don't know if I really have advice so much as just, empathy for I feel you, and that's really unfortunate that you're in that situation. And I suppose this was largely kind of like a venting call, because I know that I think that the internet has provided me with
an incredible amount of support resources. And I don't think I would identify as non-binary or even really understand what trans people were had I not been so involved in internet culture, because the internet is just such a broad resource that's so easily accessible, which is why people like right-wing politicians want to limit it. And I think my biggest frustration is that I get that, you know, because they, them is so rarely used for a direct individual as a singular person, people can make mistakes. It takes time to adjust. And I am perfectly understanding when people make a mistake if they correct themselves. Because, you know, my best friend's mother, who I, you know, had a talk with my mother with, has had that adjustment period. But now, you know, she does use, you know, she, her for my trans friend all the time. I know this is possible. And I know that she's smart enough to, you know, really understand this. And, you know, when even the children who are in my life are able to understand this, the necessity of this pronoun, and yet not, and I've heard her correct herself exactly once, no other time. No matter how, beyond that, no matter how many times I correct her, she just does not correct herself. She just continues on like nothing happened. And that's a frustrating situation for me to deal with.
So yeah, I totally feel the frustration. I have like two experiences here that I can share that are relevant. One is one of my friends who I've known since I was, I don't know, 11 or something, who I don't see that often. So hasn't, you know, I see them like once a year or something. And I mentioned it in a show recently that they misgendered me the other day in front of people. Like for the first time I've been like misgendered in real life in like years, and it was just so weird. Like it kind of caught me off guard. It being weird was like the main thing, but how I responded to that and how I responded to my other friends when I came out and asked people to switch pronouns, some were really quick at it and never made a mistake. Some every now and then made a mistake, and some made loads of mistakes all the time. And this person obviously still making some mistakes. But I would, in the case where it was a friend who I know was trying, I would just correct them. Sometimes just like they would be like, "Oh, he did this," and I'd just be like, "She," anyway, and then just like, you know, not make a deal out of it. Just to, if you just keep reminding someone who's trying, they'll get sick of being reminded and they'll just get it eventually. Or another way was to make a really big sarcastic scene about it, like, "He, who's he?" Or like, you know, if they say the wrong name or something, be like, "Who's that? I've never heard of them. Are you talking about someone else now?" And then it's just so embarrassing that they have to do something about it, because otherwise I say the exact same thing every time. But that was when people were more trying. And when people weren't trying, I had in one case with a family member who was just really slow at it, and I didn't think was really putting in the effort. And it was the point where they were like one of the last people left in my life to be calling me the right thing. And it was like after face surgery, after I'd been transitioned for years, and they were still saying the wrong thing. And there was a situation where it was like some family and then friends of family and friends of their friends and stuff. And we're in this big situation with loads of different people. And this person came over and asked me a question. And then my family member was like, "Oh, he thinks this." And this person just looked so confused. Like they hadn't even considered, like it was just like jarring for them. But how I reacted to the family members after that situation resolved, I just told them, like, that was so humiliating for me. I feel like you're not trying. I feel like you don't care. Like, it was awkward for them. It was awkward for me. It was awkward for everyone listening. You have to do better than this, because otherwise I'm going to be in a situation where I don't want to be around you anymore. And that was the last time they misgendered me. So it did go in, and I think that it was because it was an emotional. Like, you can sit someone down and say, "Oh, can you please call me this?" But that doesn't like connect emotionally in a way that sometimes when it's fresh and they've just done it and it's just so frustrating and so humiliating, and you're just like, please, can you just put in the effort? Can you just see this is important for me? And sometimes that can sway them.
Yeah, absolutely. The only time that my mother has corrected herself was when it was in front of my nibblings, which, for those who don't know, is a gender-neutral term for niece and nephew. I try not to be, too overt about my trans activism around my nibblings, but I also don't hide it either. I just want them to have, trans and non-binary people just be a part of life like anyone else. And so whatever they identify as growing up, as they do, then I'm here to support them. And my older brother is allowing me to, read queer-themed storybooks to them. And I think that suggests that my mum wants this, the concept, at least, to be something that is normal. And so I don't think it would be appropriate for me to make a big stink about it when I'm around my nibblings, because they're 7 and 5 respectively. They don't they're still learning a lot about the world, and I just can't see myself potentially upsetting them and, causing that, big, loud argument in that situation, when I think just using it casually and just, occasionally name dropping the term non-binary to illustrate that point and then just, get on with the day works better for them. But I think if it, even though I'm not a very confrontational person, I think that perhaps in a more public setting, it might be better to use that strategy of pretending like using the wrong pronouns is to be talking about a different person. Because I knew who I am. I know the journey I've been through to get to this point where I am just starting to, change my gender presentation to be more feminine and like. And I want that journey to be recognized and to be just a reflection of who I am, so that I can continue to be in the lives of my family. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I've taken a very similar approach with my little brother. I don't want to really talk about any of my sort of activist stuff with him. I just kind of want to be a presence in his life and hope that might impact him somehow in the future. So yeah, I definitely think that is a good approach, at least for children. But yeah, I'm definitely sorry you're going through that with your mom. It's very rough and frustrating when I think, Katy's story really illustrated a good point about, it's the effort that really matters, even if they're making consistent mistakes. If there's an effort, it's a lot easier to be forgiving.
Mm.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, before I go, I wanted to ask Katy one very quick thing, and I promise that this might sound like a tangent, and it's become a hat trick, but it is trans-related. What is your favorite, metal album art? Because there's a meme going around on a Facebook group I'm part of where we're taking random metal album art and adding the simple caption, "Me and the homies on our way to bully transphobes."
Oh, what? That's quite good. Oh, I want to know if my favorite album art would really fit with that. But
That's
I gotta think of a good one.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, just name any random metal album artwork.
I really love Rust in Peace by Megadeth's album art. I just love the colours and the picture. I don't know if that would quite work, but maybe it would. I guess maybe the P-cells want to work better.
Something like, I could probably change it to something like me resurrecting the homies to go and bully trans phones. Even death cannot
Yes,
stop us.
exactly.
That's pretty good.
Anyway,
I'm sure there's some proper good ones.
Talking to both of you, and thank you very much for this conversation. I will see you around.
All right, bye now.
Bye.
Alrighty, that concludes the caller portion of our show. We are going to move on to take super chats now. So if you want to send a super chat of $5 or more, we will read those out live on air. And we're going to be starting that right now. You want to start, Katie?
I think we need to guess whether every super chatter, if they don't explicitly say whether we've got to guess whether they like balls or not. No, we shouldn't do that. That'd be really bad. Anyway, 666 metal from MITU CLA is a dirty word in Burundi. Okay. They say...
What the fuck? I thought this was the comment.
Yeah. Daylight savings due to farmers needing more daylight for their farming. Maybe because in the UK the sun comes up sooner because it's further north. Maybe,
Well, then why would they do it at all?
Maybe farmers' tractors have headlights, and I don't believe that as an excuse anymore. And we should get rid of it because it's bullshit.
Yeah, I've heard that actually the clearly inferior time setting, where the what do you call it when it's not daylight savings? Daylight normals. The one that everyone likes because it gets darker earlier, or the one that everyone dislikes, that one's actually supposed to be better for your circadian rhythm. I like daylight savings time better because summer, it's warm and it's nighttime and there's light so much further, and I like that because I'm just more of a night person, but I've heard it's worse for your body or your sleep cycles.
That's probably some winter lover who said that. They can fuck off.
But thank you, person whose username I'm not going to even try to say. We've got $10 from Joe White. Are there non-gendered honorifics? Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, ma'am. Excuse me,
mate.
Nibblings. No, mate is good. I don't know. I actually, interestingly, at the Reptile Expo I was at most recently, I mentioned that I'm not normally out. I was next to, we were vending next to two gay men, and one of them had a big pride flag on his phone. So I went over and I was like, hey, by the way, I'm trans. Crazy how many Trumpers are in these spaces, huh? And then we just like commiserated over it for a while. And then he came over and he was like, is it okay if I say you guys when there are trans people? I had to be like, yes, you guys is fine. If you're saying it to everyone, it's fine. If you're like never saying it, but when trans women come up, you're like, hello guys. That might be different. Yeah. But I don't know. I think honorifics are stupid. There are a bunch of like kind of like colloquial ones that we use, like mate, that I think are fine, but
I don't say sir or ma'am. I think they're bullshit. I just say mate for everyone. I think it's perfect.
I don't even know if mate would count as an honorific. It's kind of just like
probably not
a title.
Well, actually, it could be on a ship because you could be first mate.
Right. It's a little different.
$4.99 from Louise Richardson. Arden and Katie, do you know about Kathleen Stock? Oh, yes, I do. I keep getting her lectures at various universities and concerned groups with her turf theories. I keep getting her lectures. Okay. I didn't quite understand the sentence. But yeah, if you want to take down of Kathleen Stock, Krista Peterson wrote like the essay on her. It's probably a little bit out of date now. Dr. Stock is such an idiot. I mean, she's probably one of the most competent gender criticals at maintaining the propaganda position that she's not a wacko. Like, I don't know how to say this. She's like the most seemingly normal of all of the big name gender criticals, and I guess that's a compliment to her. I feel like she's the least likely to like shout a slur at me in the street out of all of them. But she's still an extremist dickhead, so
didn't she try to do like a failed university with Richard Dawkins or something?
Yeah. No, not Richard Dawkins. It was
so cringe.
Or maybe it was with Richard Dawkins.
I thought he was involved.
Oh, it could have been Richard Dawkins and Helen Joyce recently spoke in the House of Lords against trans rights, and there's this picture of him and Helen Joyce sitting there smugly smiling about how they've just given a speech asking to remove our rights. Yeah, I wonder what that university was. Does anyone remember?
Yeah, Richard Dawkins can no longer claim to just be defending biological reality if he's going to fucking
also he's not
testify.
Richard Dawkins is one of these amazing, you know that like just say the line Bart meme where it's from The Simpsons where there's like a classroom full of kids and then he says the line. Like I did a meme of that recently where it's like they say sex is binary and then everyone's like say the line like apart from the exceptions. Right. Yeah, and that's Richard Dawkins. Like he's a sex is binary apart from the exceptions. He said that. He said that in his interview, and it's like Robert Winston as well. Like they'll bring out these professors, and they'll show the first 1 second clip, and they'll be like, "Sex is binary," and they'll be like, "See, Richard Dawkins said it. See, Robert Winston said it. It must be true." And you're like, "Okay, now play the rest of the clip where they say, apart from the exceptions."
Right.
Because that's kind of like a fundamental part of the claim. But yes, anyway.
Yep.
I want to know what fake university is.
£10 from Helen Lawson. We can do a kind of health check of UK media by how much they talk about JK Rowling. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. UK is so much deeper in the transphobic stew.
No, the point that Helen is making, I think, is that they're not talking about her at all at the moment. Like, they're normally talking about her all the time, but none of the newspapers are allowed to report on her latest thing because the rich people can silence newspapers here, so...
Interesting.
That's why we needed a health check, because usually they talk about her all the time, and suddenly they're not. But maybe that isn't what Helen meant, but that's what I'm reading from.
I see.
$5 from James Call. Poppy, Katy, and Arden. No particular order. Yeah, but that is the best order, so...
Sure, yeah, no particular order, but I did happen to arrange them in this particular way.
In the way that we all instantly recognized was best worst.
The one that we know the bigots would choose. The anti-Arden bigotry. $4.99 from Seven Lions. A cis man I was into rejected my advances. He compared my flirtation to being hit on by gay men. Oh, and it was like a knife in the gut. I am so sorry, Seven. That is terrible. Brutal.
That's pretty cringe. $5 from Larry Fishman. I'm looking to start voice training soon. Are there any benefits to in-person sessions versus Zoom, Skype/Teams? Happy Pi Day in America only. Abolish team daylight savings. Yes, great. The benefits for Zoom calls are you don't have to drive anywhere, but I think it'd be much better to do it in person because there's some compression on the sound and you're always going to lose some of it, and I think that's quite important.
Yeah, I think if you have vocal training, like singing, I think you could probably do a Zoom Skype session. But they're probably going to talk to you a lot about where you're placing your resonance. And that's going to involve like actually touching your face and your throat and to find out where your voice is getting its resonance from. And that might be better to have an in-person session with. Although I'm not completely convinced that anyone needs to pay someone to do voice training. I think it's something that you can kind of do on your own. But also I've had a lot of vocal training before, so that might be coming from a different perspective.
$5 from Bumblebee. Happy Pi Day, ladies. At Arden Hart and Katy Montgomerie. Pi. Going Team Arden today because I hate everyone. Thanks for the lizard pics.
Oh man, there's also another great picture. So the lizard that used to be in this enclosure right here, the one that's dark, used to hate all human interaction. And I came to find out he actually just hates me. We moved him downstairs where he is at more of an eye level and where he's going to be seeing all of us walk by a lot more because we thought that would help kind of desensitize him. We also moved his basking spot where he has to come out to bask, but then he's got tons of other hiding spots. and it has done wonders for him. He loves Matt. He will crawl out and sit on Matt's shoulder, but he still does not like me.
So what you're saying is he recognizes the reality of biological sex and is sexist.
Yes, exactly. You got it.
Just
not sure if that means Matt's a woman or I'm a man, but
both. Just before I get off Kathleen Stock, trying to find a fake university that she got involved with, but I can't find it now. However, I was just looking through, and there's a little bit in her Wikipedia article where it says Stock responded to the content of a letter saying, "They accused me of completely wild things like supporting patriarchy and preventing trans people from accessing medical care, even though I've not said anything about it except when it comes to children." So, and then there's a little reference there, but then there's no counterpoint, and maybe someone could edit Wikipedia to add in the extra fact that she has signed the WDI declaration and the source for that, because that might be a key piece of information for the Wikipedia article. I don't know if people know how to do that. I don't know how to edit Wikipedia. Anyway, next.
£5 from Jack Cavey. Always managed to stutter on calls. LMAO. Forgot to mention my first blunder. Said being trans takes balls. Her response? Well, eventually. Hashtag Team Katie. Wait, I need to read that again. Always managed to stutter.
Yeah, I had to read that twice. I guess it takes them as in, like, take no prisoners.
Yeah, no, I get it. Takes balls is just a colloquialism. So that I was just trying to figure out who the her is. I'm not sure.
The trans woman who he was saying that he's seen.
Oh. Okay. Yeah, I guess I got confused about who we were talking to.
$5 from Wade Hathaway Music. Tell us how you really feel about Reiki, Arden.
Reiki is a load of fucking bullshit. To say that you're actually... No, fine. I'm just going to do it. I think Corin saying that she actually heals people makes her a fucking fraud. The only thing that Reiki does is convinces you to have what's the word? The placebo response, where you're going to be thinking about how you feel in the areas that are relevant, and you're going to trick yourself into thinking that she did something when there's actually no good evidence to believe that Reiki accomplishes anything whatsoever. I think people who practice Reiki and tarot and energy reading and all of that bullshit are complete frauds, and I think it's immoral for them to take people's money to fund a practice where they continue to do those things. I'm sure Corin is a nice person. I have been friends with lots of people who are into woo because the queer community is awash in woo-woo bullshit, from psychics to tarot to astrology. But it's bullshit, and it's immoral for someone to practice Reiki in that way, I think. Katie's holding her tongue.
Yeah, you said it. You said it. $5 from Monkey at a Typewriter. Kaya's call was a roller coaster. Simultaneously heartwarming and heartbreaking. Happy for the update, though. Hashtag Team Bottoms. Hashtag Team Potatoes.
Hashtag Team Bottoms again. What is this? What is this notion of... okay. I'm just going to move on. $5 from James Call. I like big balls and I can't deny AC/DC. Word.
Actual lyrics. I was just looking up the lyrics to this. The chorus, and I'm ready for this to be taken out of snipped out of context, but the chorus of this AC/DC song is, I've got big balls. Oh, I've got big balls. And they're such big balls. Dirty big balls. And he's got big balls. And she's got big balls. But we've got the biggest balls of them all. So it's kind of, ahead of its time. Yeah, exactly.
Is this on?
£20 from Jackie Greenland. Late to the show this week, so just have money. Thanks, Jackie. That's very kind. I'll do a Team Katie this week because this week is the same as every week, and that's what you should always do. For a little home team balance, but I'll make it up to you, Arden.
That's right. I know Jackie asked about getting coffee soon. The total solar eclipse is coming over Austin, so a lot of people are coming to Austin in the near future. Yeah. €5 from Jonathan Brockett. Thanks for making my workday go by a little quicker. Get well soon, Poppy. Is Poppy unwell, or is she just being pissed at you for...
Long story, but she's stressed at the moment, and it's coming out in weeing on the bed.
Oh, right.
Like
I think...
night, so, yeah.
Yeah. I understand.
She'll get better. I hope so. She's just down here at the moment. $10 from Dade Murphy. Here is $10 for my utterly inexcusable failure to catch the show on time. You can't excuse that. It's just such a crushing failure. I can't believe it.
You know, berating yourself like this in public, though, in a degrading, humiliating way, that does kind of make up for it a little bit. So I'll maybe forgive it. $5 from Monkey at Typewriter. I like my balls. I'm so happy for you.
Good for you. $5 from Dave Murphy. Does Matt put noodles in his chili?
Noodles? No? Who puts noodles in their chili?
Do Americans call spaghetti noodles?
Yeah, they're like a type of noodle. Noodle is kind of like any pasta.
Spaghetti. No, that is factually incorrect. Spaghetti is a type of pasta, but it's not a noodle.
So, like, I will say, if you go to a noodle shop, you're going to get, like, actual noodles. And if you go to an Italian shop, you'll get pasta dishes. But colloquially, when you're just talking to American people, they will definitely just conflate noodles and pasta.
Because Americans have to be wrong about everything all the time. Yeah, I understand. Okay.
It is our eternal curse. €5.99, €5.99 from Stephen Merriman. I have borderline personality disorder. I'm not trans, so I know it isn't for me. Lived a life ruined by mental health. You two are a lifeline, XXX. Well, I'm glad you
Sorry to hear that, Stephen.
Oh, like that you know that, because I know sometimes, like, sense of self is a thing that people with borderline struggle with. So it's good that you know that.
£5 from Sika. I guess, yeah, okay. I'm trans and grew up loving Harry Potter, and I really struggle to decide if I should continue to buy into Harry Potter or boycott. Hate JK Rowling, but love her work. Yeah, it's difficult, but I think it's just got to be your own personal decision. I really love early Megadeth and Dave Mustaine's Beat Dickhead. I quite like a couple of Mayhem albums, to be honest. And, we were talking about Varg Vikernes earlier, though I don't think he was actually on any of them. So. Same, but there are a lot of problematic metal bands, and I just managed to draw the line. But Harry Potter is different because J.K. Rowling's so prominent, and also it's more than just like liking a song, it's like buying into a world.
Yeah.
All I got to say, Pokemon isn't currently problematic. It's really good, so maybe do it.
I think I appreciate that. I do think it is different in that it is like a moral good thing to boycott Harry Potter stuff, or maybe even like Megadeth stuff. I think it would be almost impossible for everyone to be completely morally consistent that all the things they support are from people who share their values. And so generally speaking, yeah, I am very much on the side of that's a line you have to draw for yourself. But yeah. Anyway. And the last super chat of the day is $5 from Jonathan. Can somebody explain the mayonnaise thing? #Team Eggs. Well, Jonathan, Katy has a long-standing irrational fear of slime texture. Irrational fear of slime texture. I have a mute button over here, and I'll use it on your ass. An irrational fear of slime texture, and so she thinks that anyone who doesn't also hate mayo must in fact be bought out by Big Mayo.
See, let me just explain it properly. Slime it's just like broken glass. It's not food, right? So that's just how I would in a normal world
What
where
is that sentence?
like, okay, what I'm trying to say is I'm not irrationally prejudiced because you wouldn't say I was irrationally prejudiced against eating broken glass. I just don't eat it because it's not food. But the difference is there isn't an international broken glass sandwich lobby that tries to sneak broken glass into food without you knowing about it. Like, you don't see a sandwich that says, like, egg and cress sandwich. Oh, no, wait, worse, when it says cheese and salad sandwich, and then you buy it, and then it's got slime in. Like, you'd be disgusted if you bought it and a broken glass in. It's just the same. It's exactly the same situation, apart from in our universe, there is an international slime lobby that leaks slime into everything that they can without putting it on the label, without wanting people. People are like, oh, welcome to my house. I'm having a barbecue. Would you like some bread? And I'm like, yeah, of course you would. And they're like, let me just butter that for you. No, let me just dunk it in lava for you. Like, I don't want slime.
You don't want butter either? No, you are irrational.
I don't
We're
want
moving on from
slime.
this topic because
I don't
Katie
want
can't be
slime.
trusted for her food opinions. Fucking...
No, this isn't a food opinion because it's not food.
The sentence,
It's not food.
slime is
Broken
the same
glass
as
isn't
glass
food.
because they're not food. It's gonna go down in a history book somewhere. Anyway, thank you so much,
Everything I'm
Dragon,
saying
for
is
call screening today.
uncontroversial.
Thank you so much
I'm
to all of our
normal.
mods for keeping chat respectful, and thank you to the callers and the viewers for showing up. Without you guys, we wouldn't even have a show. We'd just be sitting here talking about mayo to nobody, and that would just be really cringe. But it's not cringe because there are people here. So, yeah, thank you guys so much. And we don't know who's going to be back on next week yet, but we will let you know as soon as we know. So, also, when this ends, you're going to be sent over to the waiting room for Jimmy's Sometimes show, and you should stick around and watch that because it's really funny. He's got a new bit where they're kind of doing something similar to the news thing with on SNL, where, like, they'll write the bits for each other and then have to read them out, and that's like covering the news, but somebody else wrote the jokes for you, so it's really awkward and funny. Yeah, you should go watch that. It'll be a good time.
Also, when you go over, you need to all of you, ask Jimmy if he likes balls.
God damn it. I think it's hilarious because he's not going to know the context, so I actually endorse that.
Don't tell him. Don't tell him. Just everyone just ask him.
Jimmy, do you like balls? I like balls, okay? Don't get rid of them. Anyway, see you losers later. If you want to get your name scrolling up the Patreon list, all you gotta do is go to patreon.com/calltheline. It's the best way to support all of our shows. Do it, and you'll be cool. I think that's how that works.
Yeah.
Bye.
Don't put